Okay, everybody. I think I've got all my technical pieces working now. Oh my goodness. Doing the live stream feels like it's a valuable add-on for us, and just is it's a little more learning curve for me. But I'm so happy to be doing it with you, and I think we got that going. Yay, live stream! And I'm just trying to work it out for you there. And so let us begin. Week 2 of Finding Freedom. So great. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm going to put my mouth right up close to the microphone so you can hear me really well. And we're going to pray here. And I so appreciate. All right. I've got a bunch of questions coming in already. So let's just begin with a prayer and center in and focus. And remember, I'm going to give you a load. So the whole thing about finding freedom is for you to make the commitment to work with all the pieces. And the more you listen, the more you will learn. And so I give you many different videos, and you can watch and listen to them over and over again. I give you the 7 classes each week and the opportunity to ask me questions in the class and at Facebook. And then also you've got the transcripts. So when you read and listen together, you're going to get a whole lot more out of it. And then, of course, the fabulous workbook. So you can work through the pieces in the workbook, and it's wonderful. It really works when you work it. I cannot tell you how many people, well, hundreds, have told me that working the actual pieces has completely transformed their life. And so many people have given me all kinds of testimonials saying that, oh, Jennifer, you changed my life, you changed my life, you changed my life. I've heard that so many times. I don't know how to change your life, but I can give you the tools and the things that actually work, and you can change your life. And it really works when you work it. So that's what we're all about here in Finding Freedom. You can do a little or you can do a lot according to your stamina, according to your willingness, according to the time you have. Some people take the class and they work it over 15 weeks or 3 months. That's up to you. And if you really go for an intensive, then you can really change your mind and change the habits and patterns very quickly. What I do know is that these tools work. So particularly working with that mastery journal page, those 2 pages, morning and night, every day, is really going to make a difference for you. Working the worksheet, doing your forgiveness letters, the medicine water, all of those pieces, and you've got those videos to watch, which had the instructions, and the workbook has instructions as well. So I don't take up time with that in the class anymore. I used to spend quite a bit of time in the class on those things, and I don't have to anymore. So now I can take more of your questions and give you even more tools, which is really my goal. So let us place our hand on our heart here and be so grateful and so thankful right now to turn within and to recognize the power and the presence of divine love is active in us. Each and every one of us has installed within the knower who knows, that wise one, and it truly is the I am presence. There is a spiritual blueprint for our life, and we are uncovering it. We're literally dusting off the blueprint, dissolving and resolving all of the dust and grit from the journey that has covered up our perfection, our wholeness, that diamond heart that is within each and every one of us, that treasure that is our true identity. Every single one of us, underneath the judgments, the opinions, the thoughts of lack and attack, there remains that pure, pristine diamond heart within each one of us. So here in this moment, we are dedicating ourselves to revealing it, to uncovering it, and to bringing it forth as the truth of our life. We are grateful and thankful that we can do this and that we can do it together. We are grateful and thankful to share the benefits of our healing and our expansion with everyone because we're one with them. In grace and gratitude, we let it be, and so it is. Amen. Amen, amen. So, I'm just going to get myself a little more situated here. And if you're hearing an echo, it might be that you're listening to the webcast and the video cast at the same time. So you have to choose one. But if you just choose one, then you should be okay. All right. So let us see here. All right. One of the pieces that I think is really, really valuable in the class, I just added it the last time and people told me that it was very helpful to them, is the release and clear. That's one of the tools in there, and it's something that you do for 21 days. And it takes you 5 to 10 minutes each night to do it. And all the instructions are there in the workbook. It's the release and clear. So I'm inviting you to start adding that, to consider adding that. And there's a little chart for you there in the workbook to write in the dates for 21 days. So you kind of check it off that you did it for 21 days. And it's very helpful, and you do it right before you go to bed, like right as you're getting into bed, and read it aloud. It's really important to read aloud. So I invite you to begin working with the release and the clear. One of the most powerful tools that you have at your disposal in your healing is the practice of love and gratitude. Love and gratitude, love and gratitude. Many, many people, what they do in their daily life is they walk through their daily life judging, forming opinions, thoughts of lack, limitation, thoughts of attack. And so what we're doing is we're literally cultivating the ability to replace the thoughts of lack and attack with love and gratitude. What you'll notice is when you go into thoughts of lack and attack, you're going to experience more lack and more of a sense of being judged, feeling cut off, feeling limited, feeling a sense of fear and disharmony and upset. Not helpful. Not helpful at all. So what we're going to do is replace that with love and gratitude. Love opens everything up. It's like the magic elixir juice. And the more you look for opportunities to think loving thoughts, to replace the thoughts of lack and attack, the more healing you're going to experience. Why? Love is the only true healer that there is. And so it's you thinking thoughts of love, you allowing yourself to experience the feelings of love. And it's more than affection. It's really the open-hearted, free flow of goodness. So one of the tools that you have to help you with that is the deep desire of the heart. And I have a video for that, and I'm going to put it up on the video page. And you have an exercise in your workbook, Deep Desire of the Heart. So I'm mentioning these things as things that you're going to begin to cultivate working with. So if you can, a couple of times during the week, work with the deep desire of the heart exercise. It's all explained in the workbook and in the video. Then what will happen is if you make that time for that, you're going to start to really notice that your energy is shifting. One of the things I hear all the time from people who are in finding freedom is that even their family, friends, and colleagues tell them that, wow, you're really shifting, you're really changing. They notice the difference right away. So it's from doing the actual things in the class. It's just not going to change your life listening to a class. Reading the transcript isn't going to change your life, and watching the videos isn't going to change your life. What changes your life is you changing your thinking. And how you change your thinking is you implement all of the tools that I'm giving you. So one of the great things is we already have done all the research. These tools work. So you don't have to figure out which tools to use. Just use the ones that I'm sharing with you. Now, one of the most important things for us to understand in terms of changing our thinking is the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect. And to that end, I'm going to invite you, if you're a Course in Miracles person, and even if you're not, then to read, there are 2 sections. It's about a total of 4 to 5 pages. In chapter 2 of the text, you will see there's the section on fear and conflict and the section on cause and effect in chapter 2 of the text for A Course in Miracles. I'm going to invite you to begin to read those multiple times this week. Fear and conflict, cause and effect. Again, the more you read them, the more you'll perceive them. And just, it's about really taking them in. So read even just a paragraph a day from these. And then really contemplate what it's saying. But the gist of what you're going to read in there is this. All thought produces form at some level. What does that mean? Your thoughts produce form. What is form? Form is your experience. Form is how you feel. Your emotions are part of the form of your life. So all thought produces form at some level. So everything that you're thinking is producing an experience in your life. So the only way that we can truly find freedom and wake up to the power and the presence of divine good in our life is through taking responsibility for our thinking and changing our thinking from allowing ourselves, giving permission to ourselves to think the thoughts of lack and attack, exchanging that for the commitment to think the thoughts of love and gratitude. So, this is the primary work that we're doing in Finding Freedom. And you will notice as soon as you really begin to energize the thoughts of love and gratitude and offload the thoughts of lack and attack, really replacing the habits of giving yourself permission to judge, to have opinions, to complain, and to take offense, replacing all of that with the habits of gratitude, compassion, love, generosity, kindness, and patience, that your whole life will begin to change. Because when you're authentically being compassionate and loving and grateful, what happens is it's like greasing your life and making divine grace the substance of your life. And you'll be amazed how you naturally, magnetically begin to attract all kinds of wonderful experiences. And remember, like attracts like. It always has and it always will. So for me, I used to be I would say, coming from New England, I would say I was a wicked complainer. I complained and complained and complained. And one of my things that I used to do back in the day was I would get together with my friends and we would drink and smoke and complain. Go out to dinner, have a big margarita, smoke cigarettes. This was back in the day when you could smoke in a restaurant, and we would complain all the way through. We would just complain about our coworkers and our boss and everything. Just complain and complain and complain. And then when I began to transform my life and I realized that it was making me miserable to be a complainer, and I didn't want to do it anymore because it was not helpful, I started to really recognize the pain and suffering that I was experiencing was caused by my thinking. Began to really see that. I stopped complaining and began to stop complaining. And my friends didn't want to hang out with me anymore because they would go into the lack and attack and the complaining and taking offense mode. And I would say, well, let's wait a minute. Is that what we really want to put our energy and focus into? And they'd look at me like, yeah, that's why we're sitting here drinking and smoking cigarettes. So that we can give ourselves permission to think these kinds of thoughts. Yeah. So, I can honestly say that my untrained mind was really, I reached a point where I truly was suicidal. And in A Course in Miracles it says, an untrained mind can accomplish nothing. And it's so clear that a trained mind can accomplish everything, including your miraculous healing. So let's see, we've got someone who's got a question on the line here, and I'm going to unmute you there. I can barely hear you. Someone in San Rafael has a question?
It's Diana, and I am having difficulty in hearing you on the video. It's repeating twice, and I can't track what you're doing.
All right, so maybe you don't want to listen to me on the video. Maybe just listen to me on the other, and then it won't sync up. And so just listen on the other then.
Okay.
Or listen on the phone.
I'm listening on the phone because I couldn't do the other. I enjoyed it last week, and I'm watching you, and so I'll just listen on the phone. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Yeah, sometimes it just, I do it the same way all the time. I don't know why people have different experiences at different times. So I think sometimes the quality of the internet is different and different browsers and things like that. So, yes. But thank you for, it's always helpful when someone raises their hand and lets me know something's going on. And remember, at any point, if you do have a question, you can raise your hand, and I will just keep checking to see who raised their hand, and I will keep checking with questions that somebody's asking how to access the Facebook group. There is a link to the Facebook group from the website, and from our membership website, and you just click that link, go to Finding Freedom Group, or you can search for it at Facebook, and then ask to become a member, and we'll have you become a member. Let's see. Gina has a question. I've been having a struggle and rough time of things, still in early stages of grief from breakup of 20-year marriage the day after Christmas. Oh, that does sound very challenging, Gina. I am needing some guidance and advice on forgiveness, please. If you can forgive someone for past hurts, but then decide not to have them in your life in any way, is this still the resistance of the ego and not true forgiveness? So the forgiveness letter, and there's a video, and the whole process is in your workbook, is really going to help you, Gina. It's really, really going to help you. I always say start with writing a forgiveness letter to yourself first. Now, I also give the forgiveness letter to the folks who are in my year-long Masterful Living class. And this is something that I experience every year in Masterful Living. That there will be someone who, we can even be 3, 4, 5, 6 months into Masterful Living, and someone will say, come in and ask a question in the class and say, Jennifer, I love this class and it's great and everything, but I just feel like I'm not having the kind of breakthrough that I'd like to have. And they'll say, I'm still really struggling with some of my relationships and things like that, and I really would like to have a major healing and have my energy back to be creative and to have a more successful career, financial life, things like that. What can you recommend? Inevitably, every single time, I ask them, "Have you done a forgiveness letter?" Well, no, I haven't. Like, you know what? Do the forgiveness letter, and then come back next week and tell me how you're feeling. Inevitably, it changes everything for them. So it's about really truly doing a forgiveness letter to yourself, and then seeing if there's anyone else to do a forgiveness letter around. But always start with yourself and be as thorough as you can. And I encourage you to really allot some time for it. Give yourself at least an hour to do it, because you want to do it carefully. This is about healing and transforming your whole life. So there's no point in rushing it. You really want to have the deep healing. So give everything you can to it. Read the instructions carefully, follow them carefully, and you will receive tremendous benefit. I can't do it for you, but I definitely know in my heart that you can do it for you, and you will have amazing transformation. So Gina, I invite you to write a forgiveness letter to yourself, and then maybe write a forgiveness letter to your spouse, your former spouse. Now, in terms of ending relationship, let me just say this. You're eternal. Both of you are eternal beings. You're infinite. You're one with each other. So the fact is, you can't actually end the relationship. It's literally not possible for you to end the relationship. However, you can stop talking to each other, you can stop communicating, and that will probably create stress and distress, because love is the only healer that there is. So if we're withholding love, holding on to resentment, holding on to regret, taking offense, blaming, feeling ashamed, all of that is going to bring us great suffering. So love is the only healer. And I know so many couples who have done this work and had tremendous results. And of all kinds, So instead of having any attachment to the results that you'd like to have, let the only result you're interested in is peace of mind, peace of heart. And that you definitely can achieve, my friend. Definitely. Really good questions. All right. Let's see. A couple people are having technical problems, but it does seem that the majority are not. So, I'm sorry. It happens sometimes. And you might try the phone if you're having trouble with the webcast. Remember, we have local numbers for the UK, Canada, Australia, and the United States. You get a local phone number in your area, so you can call in on the phone, and if the webcast or the video cast aren't working for you. And you can also Skype in, and that's a free way to access from the computer as well. Because sometimes I Skype in when I'm traveling outside the U.S. All right, so law of cause and effect. All thought produces form at some level. If you'd like to change your experience of your life, it's about having the willingness to change your thinking, having the true willingness to change your thinking. Now, when we are in judgment, we are in attack mode. And by judgment, I also mean opinion. What is judgment? What is opinion? We're going to get into that. And all judgments equal your suffering. So let's talk about this a little bit here. Your judgments are basically, they are thoughts that have the purpose of separation. So judgments are saying this is good and that's bad, this is right and that's wrong. And you're the one who decides. So in a very real sense, it is absolutely the number one tool for feeling separate from the divine. How does that work? Well, basically, the nature of the divine is this. We can call the divine love, we can call it life, we can call it the universe, we can call it the higher Holy Spirit self, the I am that I am, all names for holiness. And really, truly, God is love. Love is God. What are you? You are love. So one of the things you'll hear me say over and over again is, seek first the kingdom which is within, and all else will be added unto you. So the 7 weeks of Finding Freedom are really about clearing away any interest in your mind in seeking something other than the kingdom, seeking outside of yourself instead of seeking the kingdom within. What is the kingdom? Who is the king in the kingdom? The kingdom is heaven. It is true, unlimited, unprecedented, loving expression and experience. Who is the king in the kingdom? You are. Love is. You are love, and you are the king in the kingdom. Love is the king in the kingdom. So seek first love in your life, in your heart, and all else will be added unto you. So seek to be the perfect giver and receiver of love through your moment by moment choices, actions, and thinking. And this is what we're going to work on all 7 weeks here. And then everything else will be added unto you. The way I describe this is, instead of working in the visible world of form, where you can touch things with your hands, we're working in the invisible world of spirit. Why? Because it's so much faster. Remember, all thought produces form at some level. So if you would like to change the form, the circumstances, the feeling, the energy of your life, to be more harmonious, more peaceful, more loving, more prosperous, more beautiful, more creative, more expansive, don't work in form. That's the slow way. Work in the invisible. Why? Because when you're working in the invisible, it's instantaneous. It is miraculous. Working in form takes time. So this is why I distinguish between working in the invisible and working in form. And I call working in form pushing density. So the world of form that we see with our eyes is slow vibration, feels density. It takes time. So working in form is you'd like to shift an experience in your life, maybe create a new job or do online dating to meet a wonderful new partner. So you're working in form, you're sending emails, you're setting up a profile, you're sending out resumes, you're going to coffee shops and having dates and doing speed dating or whatever you would do to have a new job or meet a potential partner to date. That's all working in form. Working in invisible is clearing out your heart to any blocks to love and holding in your heart that you'd like to be in the most wonderful opportunity to express and share your gifts and talents in the world in ways that are profoundly fulfilling for yourself and for others. And what you'd like to do is be in a beautiful relationship that is healing and nourishing and uplifting and inspiring, where you can be the perfect giver and receiver of love every day. When you're working in the invisible that way, seeking love, seeking to express and reveal and know the King in the kingdom is love, and to be the love of your life, everything else will be added unto you. It's kind of an incredible formula. Seek first the kingdom, and all else will be added unto you. So why would you work in the world of density and form when you can work in the invisible? It's only because you don't feel competent, right? You don't feel competent, and or you don't trust God. And you don't trust God to bring forth the highest and best for you. So you want to control, manage, and manipulate it. If you want to control, manage, and manipulate it, then you're not trusting Spirit, then you know what? You want to be the God of your world, which means you really would like to be separate from God. So every experience you're having is going to teach you that be energizing separation in your mind brings suffering. So judgments, opinions, complaints, thoughts of lack and attack all create suffering because they're all ways of edging God out. Remember that acronym for ego, edging God out. It's really helpful. So when we're identified with the small self, the limited self, the ego, then we're going to be edging God out. We're not going to be trusting the infinite spirit. We're not going to trust love. We're going to trust in our own opinions and judgments. So when we think the thoughts of opinion and judgment, we are essentially saying, God doesn't know what's best for me. I know what's best for me. But the only way we would ever say that is if we're identified with the ego. And the ego does not know what's best for us. Because the ego will never choose love. And love is the only healer that there is. So, we're looking for places where we're holding on to judgments and opinions. And one of the things that I find helpful is to really recognize that what's the relationship between a judgment and an opinion. So I say this, judgments and opinions are about sorting, right? Separation is sorting. So judgments and opinions help us sort the good from the bad, the right from the wrong. Who's deciding the sorting? We are. But it's really, we're giving ourselves over to the ego because our higher Holy Spirit self, the I am that I am, our true identity, our spiritual identity, knows that God is all that there is and God is good. In A Course in Miracles, in lesson 135, paragraph 18, it says, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything, all the circumstances and all the situations of your life are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good. So, when we are looking at the circumstances and the situations and the experiences of our life and saying this should not be, then we're in opinion and we're in judgment. We can say, look, I don't really like this, and yet somehow this is for my good, and that's what I'm interested in discovering. How could this, which I don't like, be for my good? Well, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's the law of cause and effect. So what we're going to see with our eyes and experience with our body, physical body, emotional body, and mental body, all of that experience in the world of form is a byproduct of our thinking. So if we're thinking thoughts of lack and limitation, then we're going to experience lack and limitation. So the pain and the suffering that we experience in lack and limitation, like through bankruptcy or the death of a loved one and things like this, they're letting us know that the pain and the suffering we're experiencing is a byproduct of our thinking. Because it's possible to go through the experiences and not feel pain and not be in denial, but to remain at peace. And that is spiritual mastery. And the more we walk that path of spiritual mastery, we can still be in joy, we can still be in harmony, even though the circumstances of our life are not exactly as we would have them, but we're recognizing that they are our teacher. And we're more interested in experiencing and harvesting the wisdom that's encoded into every moment by means of divine order, which is always operating. Divine will is operating all of the time. Divine order is operating all of the time. There is no other thing operating because God is all that there is. So if we're looking at the situations and circumstances of our life and thinking, this should not be happening, this should be different than it is, those shoulds are indicating that we're in opinion and judgment. If we're energizing opinion and judgment, basically what we're saying is, I'm not interested in divine order. I'm not interested in divine will. I'm not interested in discovering the good that's encoded into all the circumstances and situations of my life. I'm going to label this bad and wrong. God is not here. God has left the building. Now I'm in charge. And I don't like this. So I'm going to label it bad. Rather than learn from it, rather than open my heart and mind to changing my thinking and recognizing that my experience is an effect of my thinking, I'm just going to label it and say I don't like it, it's bad, it's wrong, it should be different, and then I'm just going to sit in my suffering like sitting in a dirty diaper and denying that God is the only power that there is, because now I'm the power that decides who's good and who's bad and who's right and who's wrong. This was the major mechanism that I used in my life to create so much suffering. So when you're in judgment and when you're in opinion, then what's going on is you are the one who's deciding who's right and wrong, good and bad. So I want to talk about a couple of other things, discernment and preferences. Because these judgments, opinions, discernment, preferences, this is really going to help you start to look at your life in a new way, really understanding this and recognizing when you move out of discernment into preference, into opinion, and into judgment. So discernment, this is your wisdom faculty, your God-given wisdom faculty, which is what you apply to the situation. So you're discerning wisdom, information, insight, intuition in the circumstances and situations of your life. So one of the examples I like to use is you might look at a situation and be tempted to say, for instance, he's a jerk, he's an idiot. You don't really understand everything that's going on. You can't see through all directions of time and space. And because of that, you're going to make a surface snap judgment and put a label on it. He's a jerk, he's an idiot. I don't like him. I don't trust him. Discernment is where you might be able to look a little bit closer and say, oh, he's acting like an idiot, but that doesn't mean he is an idiot. I'm discerning that his behavior is erratic, that perhaps he seems untrustworthy because he's identified with the ego and he thinks he is a shameful and bad person. And so he's trying to be controlling and manipulative because he doesn't have faith that people would give him kindness, generosity, attention, love, any good thing unless he controls and manipulates them. So his behavior is that of someone who might be seen like a jerk or an idiot. But when you are discerning, you realize actually he's just afraid. And so he's being controlling and manipulating because he doesn't trust. And so that's why he's acting that way. He's not actually a jerk or an idiot. He's just a beautiful soul who has identified with the ego, doesn't know who he is. He's forgotten who he is. He's forgotten that he's the king in the kingdom. He's forgotten that he's the love of God. And so he's behaving in a way that someone who forgets who they really are behaves. And it seems like he's an idiot or a jerk, but there are no idiots and there are no jerks. And he's appearing this way in my life so that I can practice being patient and kind and generous and compassionate and discerning. Therefore, I can give thanks that he is in my life to teach me, to show me, to give me an opportunity to truly practice at a deeper level. I could label him and dismiss him, but then I would also be rejecting my learning opportunity, my practice opportunity. And I've done that so many times, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to seize the day and be grateful and thankful for this generous soul who's affording me an opportunity to practice. And because like attracts like, in some way, I must know that I am like him because I am also one with him. So I'm going to extend love and compassion, which are the only healers. Compassion's an expression of love. It's loving understanding. And then we're both healed. And then we're both healed. And this is the fast track to finding freedom. Doing work this way. Seizing every opportunity instead of labeling it as not good, bad, wrong, etc. So we're moving into discernment, and it's the willingness to see more than what's on the surface, to see with divine insight rather than the ego's way of looking at everything, which is labeling, 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 labeling. When we're identified with love, the king and the kingdom, then the label for everything is good. Yeah, we don't have to separate with labels anymore. We're interested in joining when we're identified with the higher Holy Spirit self. So all day long we get an opportunity to choose where we'll place our identification, with fear, with the ego, with lack, with limitation, which means we'll experience more of that, or with love, with generosity, with patience, with kindness, with compassion, so we can experience more of that. It's up to us. What would we like to experience? Yep. So discernment is a tool that we can use that helps us to more clearly see the opportunities to choose love and compassion. Judgment is also a tool. It is, I think of it more as a weapon of separation. It's a weapon of attack. Now we've got our judgments and opinions, we've got discernment. The next thing is preferences. So preferences are really key. For some people, they will say that a preference and an opinion are the same. It depends, I believe, in how you hold it. So a preference is, I prefer, in this moment, I prefer iced coffee. I'm having some iced espresso here. I prefer the iced drink. Some people prefer hot. In this moment, I prefer this. Do I have an opinion about hot beverages? No. I love hot beverages, but not right this minute. Do I have an opinion about iced beverages? Are they better? Are they superior? No, not at all. Now, I was talking about this once with my friend David Hoffmeister, and he said preferences are opinions. And I said, well, hang on a second, David, because for instance, I like vanilla cake. Some people like chocolate cake. Some people love chocolate so much. I think chocolate is great. I had some chocolate this afternoon, and it was yummy. But I really prefer vanilla. I like vanilla cake. Usually if there's chocolate cake and vanilla cake, I want the vanilla ice cream. I prefer the vanilla ice cream. Usually if there's chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream, give me the vanilla ice cream. I prefer the taste of vanilla. But not always. But a lot of time, that is my preference, to have the vanilla rather than the chocolate. Do I have an opinion about people who prefer chocolate? No. There's nothing wrong with people who prefer chocolate. There's nothing wrong with chocolate cake. Sometimes I prefer chocolate cake. I have no opinions about vanilla versus chocolate, or people who prefer chocolate or prefer vanilla. I just have a preference. But it is easy to kind of gray the line and say, oh, I don't like that. I prefer this. And there is a sense of having a judgment. So we need to be careful with it. But when you're starting out here and you're really looking at releasing judgments and opinions, it can be so helpful to recognize this tool that we have with preferences. So I invite you to just start to look at where you hold opinions and judgments and see if you can start to discern how to energize a preference rather than a judgment or an opinion. This is especially helpful in relationships. It helps eliminate a lot of arguments and a lot of suffering that's caused by judgments and opinions. All right, so I'm just going to see if anybody has any questions about anything that I've covered so far. Anything about so far? I know we've got a bunch of people who are on the phone listening and on the webcast. All right, well, if you have no questions, I'll keep going forward. I'm just going to remind you, if you have a question on the phone, it's *2 on your keypad to ask a question and raise your hand on your phone. And then I can call on you and unmute you. And you can raise your hand at any time. *2 to raise your hand. I have a preference for dark chocolate rather than milk chocolate. But I don't think there's anything bad or wrong with milk chocolate. So one of the things I shared with you last week was in your workbook, there's your contract. And so there's some instructions there about how to write your contract. And I've invited you to start drafting it out. And it really helps if you just keep writing it over and over again. If you can write it once or twice a day, it's really helpful to you. And then it's going to absolutely just rocket your experience in this class if you're willing to take a few minutes each morning and each evening to read your contract. The most powerful time to read your contract, early in the morning when you first get up, and then in the evening right before you go to bed. This is a great tool. It really impacts your subconscious mind, and then your higher Holy Spirit self will really help direct your healing in your dream time. Same with doing the medicine water. These practices and the release and clear right before bedtime. It takes a little time, and I don't know about you, but when bedtime comes, I'm usually pretty tired. I'm out like a light. So plan to go to bed a little bit earlier so that you can do these part of your spiritual practices. Remember, you can have profound healing, and it will come through your spiritual practices. It doesn't come from listening to the class or reading the transcript or watching the videos. It comes from doing the practices. I cannot emphasize that enough. So here to me, I'm going to give you one of the most helpful things in the class. And that is what I call the divine alarm clock. Now, when we get upset, we feel off base, irritated, frustrated, angry, sad, guilty, ashamed, depressed, any of those emotional upsets. It's what I call the divine alarm clock. So every time that we choose to energize judgments and opinions, thoughts of lack and attack, that's what they are, thoughts of limitation and separation, that's what complaints are, that's what opinions are, that's what all those negative thoughts are. Thoughts of lack, attack, limitation, and separation. Then what's going to happen is you think those thoughts, if you don't change your mind about it, and you instead invest your energy in thinking that you're right about how wrong those people are, you're right about how wrong you have been. When you give yourself permission to judge yourself or others, remember there's only one, so it does not matter if you're judging yourself or someone else, it doesn't matter a bit. Each thing is going to create just as much negativity. When you give yourself permission to think the thoughts of lack and attack, limitation and separation, then what's going to happen is you're going to experience it in your emotional body. It's going to be emotionally upsetting to some degree. If you don't deal with that, if you don't heal that, if you don't address it in a positive way, and you allow it to continue, the emotion to continue, the upset, the anger, the resentment, the hurt, the fear, the doubt, the worry, the guilt, the blame, the shame, the sadness, the depression, if you allow it to continue, and you know what happens to a lot of people? They don't just allow it to continue. They feed it. They expand it. They enlarge it. They engorge it. I used to do this all the time. I would think a thought of separation, like my parents are never going to really understand me. My boyfriend doesn't really get me. Things like that. I would think these negative thoughts, and then as a byproduct of that negative thinking, the separation thinking, the lack thinking, the attack thinking, I would feel emotionally upset. And then I would literally fan the flames of that emotional upset. They're never going to understand me because of this. And here's some evidence that they're never going to understand me. Oh, see, this is what happens because they don't understand me. Over and over again, I would energize and invest more deeply and more deeply in this thought of limitation, the thought of lack and attack, separation. And I would feel more emotional about it and more emotional about it, fanning the flames of the suffering. Then it would literally move into my physical body. I'd feel sick to my stomach. I'd get a headache, aches and pains in the body. I was lethargic. I'm going to be a couch potato now. And then all of that, also, I would move to self-medicate. I can't stand this upset. The only thing I know how to do is to try to drown it out. So I'm going to drown it out with alcohol, with drugs, with sex, with exercise, working out, cleaning, working late at work, going out with friends, smoking cigarettes and drinking, all of these things. Oh, you just, everything. We've all done it, right? We've done every kind of self-medication we could get our hands on, trying to drown out the emotional upset. But every bit of that emotional upset, the physical upset, all of that is the divine alarm clock going off, ringing like a bell. Ah! Alarm, 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 alarm. Right? Like that old show that was on when I was a kid. I can't think of the name of it now. But, what's the name of that show? With Will Robinson, the kid, and that robot. Danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger, danger, right? Remember that? Gosh, I can't think of the name of that show. Somebody will say what it is. So that's what's happening. The divine alarm clock is going off. Your higher Holy Spirit self is trying to get your attention. You can never ever feel peace and harmoniousness. You can't feel peace and harmony while you're thinking thoughts of lack and attack. And you're not receptive to your good while you're thinking thoughts of lack and attack. So isn't it wonderful that we become upset, physically and emotionally upset, when we choose the thoughts that are so destructive? Remember, the law of cause and effect is always operating. It never takes a holiday. So your thoughts are always going to produce form at some level. You think the thoughts of lack and limitation, you're going to experience lack and limitation. The first place you experience it is in your emotional body. The next place you experience it is in your physical body. And then you experience it in your physical world. It just keeps traveling out, trying to get your attention so that you will choose differently. It's part of the divine plan. You see, and that's why Course in Miracles and all the mystical teachings talk about this world being an illusion. It's a projection of your thinking. So you don't get what you want, you get what you're thinking. You don't get what you want, you get what you're thinking. And wanting is not having anyway. So you never get what you want. When you're in a wanting thought, you just create more lack, because the energy of wanting is the energy of not having. It's the energy of lack. Whenever you're I want, I want, I want, you might as well be saying I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. All thought produces form at some level. So if you're thinking the thought I want, I don't have, what's your experience going to be? Lack. It has to be. It has to be. I can remember I used to make lists of what I wanted. I want this. And I would make a list. What do I want? What do I want? I had no idea that I was making a list of things that I wouldn't be having. Lack. I could have made a list what I'm calling forth in my life, what I'm receptive to experiencing. What I want, no, not going to be happening. All right, so I'm just going to check and see. Anybody have any questions about this? Lost in Space. Thank you, Gemma. That was the show, Lost in Space. I used to love that show. It's funny. So hokey looking now, right? Compared to what we used to do. Now, here's the thing. When when we are identified with the ego, we're always going to be experiencing suffering, lack, and limitation. So in the class Finding Freedom, what we're doing is we're moving our attention from thinking that we're in lack to recognizing that we have. Because love is all that there is. We are love. Love is the king in the kingdom. Seek first the kingdom, and all else will be added unto you. So when you recognize that love is all that there is, and love is what you already are, and there is nothing else, and you're not thinking that you're in lack of love, because you're expressing love, you're experiencing love, you're energizing love, you're choosing love, then what's going to happen is you're naturally going to magnetize to you experiences of abundance and prosperity and wholeness and harmony and healing and all good. So everything will be added unto you in that sense. The more you're focused on love, then the more in every moment you're going to be looking for the highest and best choices, which are always going to be the thoughts of love. But when we're identified with the ego, we're going to be constantly looking through the ego mind thought system, which is one of constant lack. Things are never good enough. The grass is always greener. And there's always something wrong. There's always a criticism. There's always a judgment. There's always a complaint. There's always a comparison. Always a label to put on everything. So when we're in those thought patterns, then we're identified with the ego, and so we're literally squeezing our receptivity and all the good in our life into a very thin trickle. And of course, because all thought creates, if we're thinking thoughts of lack and limitation, we have to experience more lack and limitation, which then increases our suffering. And yet, the holy purpose of all that suffering is to get us to recognize that we're thinking the thoughts that cause our suffering. All thoughts of separation are going to cause experience of suffering. That's the divine alarm clock going off, letting us know to look at our thinking. So here's how I found freedom. I began to really become very mindful of whenever I started to feel emotionally or physically upset, and to recognize that I could course correct my thinking. And one of the things is, for me, I was born in 1959, so I was 9 years old when the first man landed on the moon, 9 years old. And so, how do you send a rocket to the moon? You set a trajectory, right? A course for that rocket to travel. Now, when NASA sends a rocket to the moon, the only way it can really accurately land where they want it to go is they've got this trajectory planned out, but the whole way there, course correction. So every day, it's about course correction, refining. So in the morning, through doing our mastery journal and setting our intention, our goals, getting that clarity, reading our contract, remembering our aspiration, putting energy into that, doing that each day, we're setting the trajectory for our day. And then it's constant course corrections. So one of the main course corrections that we make is if we start to feel irritated or frustrated, annoyed, or sad or upset, we'll start to notice that there's a choice point. Do I want to fan the flames of upset? Or do I want to recognize, oops, I've become identified with the small self, the selfish self, the ego self. It's time for me to identify with my true self, my holy self, the expanded self, the higher self, the Holy Spirit, the higher Holy Spirit self, as I like to call it, which is my true identity. So do I want to identify with lack of limitation, or do I wish to identify with the expansiveness, the unlimited, the abundance, the prosperity, and the wholeness that I am? So when we feel irritation, frustration, upset, sadness, any of that coming on, one of the things we'll notice is temptation to self-medicate. So look for that, temptation to self-medicate. And then another thing that will happen is that we will begin to gather evidence to justify and support our opinions, our judgments, our thoughts of lack, attack, limitation, and separation. So we're going to build a case, and when we go into this kind of thinking, what's happening is we are really identified with the ego, and now we're working for the ego. We become like a lawyer arguing the case for the ego, and we're collecting evidence to support that case. So just like I used the example before, he's a jerk, or I'm a jerk. I'm a jerk. Oh, how could I have been so stupid? Why did I open my mouth and say that thing? Oh, that was the worst possible thing to say. Now here comes the evidence building. First of all, I said something that was stupid. There's a judgment. Stupid. And then we start gathering the evidence. Oh, look, I've ruined the situation. Okay, now more evidence. We're going to build the case that I'm a jerk. I should never have opened my mouth. What was I thinking? How could I have done that? Now they're probably never going to talk to me again. They're going to think I'm an idiot. They're not going to want to hire me. They won't like me. They're going to fire me. All of these thoughts, building the evidence, gathering evidence. We only go into that evidence gathering mode when we're identified with the ego. Why is that? Because the ego doesn't know anything that's true or real. So it's always looking to justify its opinions and judgments because they're unjustifiable. They are the weapons of mass destruction, our opinions and judgments. So the ego's always going to look to gather evidence because the ego is trying to support a premise that is never going to be true. So of course it has to try to gather all kinds of evidence to get us to believe it. When we're identified with the ego, we just do what the ego tells us to do, gather the evidence. But when we're identified with the spirit, we don't gather evidence to support how good things are, how wonderful we are. We just recognize, wow, things are working together for my good. Wow, I'm feeling better today. Wow, I notice people are being kinder to me today. We start counting our blessings. So when you're identified with the ego, you're collecting evidence to support the case that something is wrong, something is bad, something is not good. But when you're identified with the spirit, you're counting your blessings. That's how you know where your identification is. So the minute you start to feel uncomfortable, oops, the divine alarm clock is going off. I must have allowed myself to slip back into identification with the ego, with the false self, I'm going to re-identify, I'm going to re-up, I'm going to partner up with a higher Holy Spirit self. Now, here's the practice that really helps. I like to call upon the angels. I like to call upon the ascended masters. These are the beings who are always with us. They can see through all directions of time and space, and they can help us make that identification transfer with more ease, more grace, more simplicity. Because by recognizing that we have divine support from our ancestors, the angels, the ascended masters, we are really saying, I am willing. Now, the teaching is ask and it is given. A Course in Miracles says ask and it is given because it already has been given. So we've already been given everything, the whole inheritance of the kingdom. But through energizing judgments and opinions, thoughts of lack and attack, we have denied our true identity. So when we ask for help in remembering the truth, in clearing away that which covers up our true identity and our true reality, all of heaven will rush to help us. All of heaven. Because in this 3D experience of the illusion of separation, we have free will and we can choose what to place our energy into. And according to what we choose, we're going to experience, because all thought produces form at some level. We choose love. The form we're going to experience is more grace, more ease, more joy, more peace, more harmony. We're going to experience the truth of our being. If we choose thoughts of separation, lack, and attack, we're going to experience suffering. It's done unto you as you believe. All thought produces form. These things are true. They're absolutely true. And so it's up to us. We can really change the situations and circumstances in our life with incredible ease, grace, and speed when we partner up. So we use our free will to align with divine will, by using our free will to choose to look for the most loving choice in every moment. Remember, love is the healer. So we get into the practice of being in the flow of love and choosing love. And then what happens is, naturally, instead of investing ourselves in gathering evidence to support the false, instead we begin to really see and know and feel and hear divine inspiration and guidance, leading us to the experience of miraculous healing, ease, grace, prosperity, and abundance naturally flowing in our life. So you can begin to see that it's really very simple. But what is challenging is cultivating the willingness to stop giving ourselves permission to energize the negativity. So really this week, get really focused on noticing when you feel attracted to gathering the evidence of why life isn't good, or why it's so hard for you, or why the situation is so sad. If you're feeling something is really sad, then you're gathering evidence to say it's not good, it's not right, it's bad, it should be different. And if you're in a should thought, you're in a judgment, you're in an opinion. And you will learn from that through creating the suffering of that. So I like to say I work for God Incorporated. Instead of working for the ego, I choose to work for God Incorporated, which means I don't know what's right and wrong, but I'm looking for the loving choice. What is the most loving choice here? What is the most compassionate choice here? How can I practice patience now? How can I ask for divine assistance, partnering up with the higher Holy Spirit self, invoking divine grace and divine guidance into my life? So if I feel confused, oh, I don't really know what's going on here, I don't know how to discern what's highest and best. I put my hand on my heart, I tune within, and you can do that without closing your eyes. You can do it in the middle of a board meeting or in standing in the store. You can just put your hand on your heart in a meeting. Nobody would even notice. I do it all day long. I do it when I'm speaking. I do it when I'm teaching. I do it when I'm driving in the car. Just place one hand on my heart and take a breath and invoke divine assistance in seeing and knowing clearly what's the best and what's the highest decision. That's the way I like to do it. All right, so we've gotten through a lot here. Whew. And I've got some more things to get through. Let's see here. And I want to just see if anybody has any questions here. Star 2 to raise your hand. Any questions at all? Okay, well, remember you can ask questions about the points that I'm making. I like to stay on topic, but if you have a question about how this applies in your life and in your experience, just that's a perfect question. We can really illuminate the teachings through that. All right. So, this is a critical piece for you that I'm about to give you. And I call it Mind the Gap. Mind the Gap. So, the way I talked before about how you think a thought, and if the thought is not true, if it's a thought of lack and attack, if it's a thought of limitation and separation, then it's going to create a disturbance in your emotional body. And if you don't resolve it then, when you start to feel emotionally upset, then it will travel into your physical body. So you can think of, like, if you feel ashamed or guilty, how does that feel physically? If you don't address that thought, if you energize it and start to gather evidence to support it, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel sick to your stomach. You're going to feel flushed, right? Anxious, nervous, irritated. I've trained myself that if I start to think a fear-based thought, because every now and then it'll happen that I'm falling asleep at night and a thought will come in, something that could bring a little agitation. And I just dismiss it. I'm not interested in thinking about that thought. I'm not interested in energizing negativity. I'm not interested in gathering evidence. I'm interested only in love and peace, extending compassion, generosity, and kindness. So I changed the channel. And then I'm back to being peaceful. So it's not about denying it, but remember, if it feels upsetting, it can't be a true thought. It can't be. Because the truth is not upsetting. The truth sets us free. That's how we know if we're thinking the thoughts that are truthful or not. Or if we are making up something because we're identified with the ego, which is always looking for a complaint, a comparison, taking offense, etc., etc. So you will start to notice, if you become discerning, you will start to notice that a thought arises like, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I'm an idiot. A thought like that arises. And then you have to choose to think it. So it's like, it's kind of like the train pulls in the station. The thought arrives in the station of your mind. Are you going to get on that train and ride it to the end or not? So I call it the pain train. So the judgment, the opinion, pulls into your awareness. It arrives in your awareness. Are you going to get on that train? Or are you going to say, no, thank you, I'm not getting on that train? So the doors will open. The thought arrives in your mind, and it's like the train arrives in the station. I used to live in New York, and the subway would come in. Or like in London, they have the underground, and that's the subway system. And the train arrives, the doors open. Are you going to get on that train and go where it's going? Or are you going to let the doors close and it moves on? And you stay right where you are in peace and harmony, identified with your true self, identified with love. So the train arrives in the station. It's tempting to get on that train, especially if your normal pattern is to get on the train. So the train arrives in the station. It might be the thought, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me. And then your normal pattern is to think that thought is true. And because it's not true, you start to gather the evidence to support it. That's effectively like getting on the pain train. And where's the pain train going? It has one destination, and that is your personal hell. It is your personal experience of being separate from your good. Heaven, which is within, is your experience of love. So if that thought pulls into the station of your mind and it feels upsetting, the divine alarm clock is going off. Just say, bye-bye, I'm not getting on you. I'm not getting with you. Now, in the London Underground, the subway in London, they have these signs. And when I first went there when I was 16, I thought it was so funny because the sign said, mind the gap. Mind the gap. It just seemed a different way of saying it. And they're talking about mind the gap between the train and the platform, because there's a gap that you could step right into and fall into. I'm sure people do it all the time. Same in the subway, but they didn't have a mind the gap sign. So I use the mind the gap to remind you to look for the pain train pulls in the station. The thought of lack and limitation pulls into your mind. There's a gap between the thought arising in your mind and you choosing to agree with it, you choosing to support it, you choosing to invest in it. You don't have to. And when you stop investing in that thought, eventually it will stop arriving in your mind. And it just will be gone. It will not arrive anymore. Trust me, I know this one. So for me, one of the biggest things was I used to think that there was something wrong with me. Now, and it used to arise all the time. Situations would happen, and I would go right to the thought, see, there's something wrong with me. There's the evidence right there. Constantly collecting that evidence. For me, when I started to really recognize that because I felt so uncomfortable judging myself, I would project the thought that there's something wrong with me out into the world, and I would say, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you, and 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 you. There's something wrong with all of you. Yeah, there's something wrong with me, but there's something even more wrong with you. I see what's wrong with you, and I'm going to put a label on it, and I'm going to affirm it. So I've just projected all that judgment out, because there's only one. So it's like all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. All judgment is self-judgment, because there's only one. So I would look at the world and judge, gathering the evidence of why everybody was wrong and bad, including me. So for my healing practice, I began to look for the beauty in everyone. I began to look for the perfection and the wholeness in everyone. And then I was amazed at my experience, because I became very dedicated to that as a spiritual practitioner and as a minister. And what happened was I completely healed the idea that there's something wrong with me. I mean, I still feel little edges of it here and there, but it doesn't cause me any distress anymore. And I don't see it showing up. I'm not gathering evidence for it anymore. I never thought I could heal that in this lifetime. I mean, I really never thought I could heal it in this lifetime. So I did it through affirming the beauty of the perfection and the wholeness in everyone I saw, including myself. Including myself. So I stopped getting on that train of there's something wrong with me. And I stopped getting on the train there's something wrong with anyone. For me, I realized this, that when you believe that there's nothing wrong with anyone, then you will realize that there's nothing wrong with you. And vice versa, because there's only one. Whew. So we are at time here. Oh my goodness. So remember that the truth is liberating. It sets you free. It's not scary. It's not terrifying. You're cultivating your willingness. Remember, you've got the willingness affirmations, working with one of them every day, going through that list and maybe writing it on a 3x5 card. You take it with you each day. Remember that if you focus on lack, you're going to experience lack. If you focus on labeling others, you're going to feel labeled and criticized as well. And so much more to share with you. We're just getting started here. Work the workbook. I can't do it for you, so please do it for yourself. The more you listen, the more you hear. The more you listen and read the transcript, we'll get the transcript up faster this week, then the more you will hear. Use the Facebook group. Okay. A lot more to come. Watch the videos. And here's the thing. All of this spiritual practice saves time. So the more you invest in spiritual practice, the more time you will have to invest in spiritual practice. Because truly, one of the things is when we do our spiritual practice, then things like our car breaking down and getting stuck in traffic jams and losing our car keys, all of those things start to happen less and less and less. Because the more we do our spiritual practice, the less we need opportunities to be forgiving, to be patient, to be kind, because we're taking advantage of the opportunities that are coming to us. So we don't have to create really stressful opportunities to practice patience and kindness and generosity. We're taking the ones that we're getting. So the more you take the opportunities to practice looking for and choosing love, choosing the highest and best in every moment, choosing the opportunities to extend love and compassion, then you're not rejecting them, so you don't have to create new ones. So this is how it saves time. So the more you invest in your spiritual practice, the more time you will have for spiritual practice. It's just how it works. Trust me on this. Do it and you will see. So the only way you're going to know that these things work is if you actually do them. Me telling you is not going to do anything for you. So let's place our hand on our heart and take this breath of love and gratitude and be so grateful and so thankful that everything is for us and nothing is against us. Let us be so grateful that no matter how often we've gotten on the pain train, no matter how often we've become the slave to the ego, gathering evidence and energizing and choosing and even enjoying choosing sadness, depression, anger, guilt, resentment. All of this is shifting and lifting because we have an active practice of choosing love, extending love and compassion. In grace and gratitude, we share the benefits of our healing and our expansion with everyone because we're one with them. In grace and gratitude, we let it be. And so it is. Amen. 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 I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you so much. We'll be putting the live stream up on the page, and you'll have your transcript and your audio. And remember, you can ask me questions in the Facebook group. I'll comment there. I don't get in there every day, but I do my best to try to get in there most days. So be well. Till next time. Yay!